Right beside the busy harbor of Snug Cove on Bowen Island is Mannion Bay, or Deep Bay as it is also known. Snug Cove and Mannion Bay have been the hub of human life on Bowen Island since the arrival of settlers in the 1800s. For millennia before that, it was the place that the Squamish peoples harvested shellfish. They called it Kwil'akm, meaning Clam Bay. For many years, I just assumed that because of extensive shoreline development, its two busy beaches, and active summer anchorages, that there wouldn't be much marine life in Mannion Bay. But two events changed my view. In the autumn of 2016, the biggest salmon run in 20 years filled the mouth of Terminal Creek where it flows into Mannion Bay. The whole bay was abuzz with life, feeding on salmon and salmon eggs. Then, in the winter of 2018, out in the bay I paddled into a chaos of gulls above a frenzy of seals and sea lions feeding on a school of anchovy. I'd never seen anything like this, even in the wildest parts of Howe Sound. I began to look at the bay with new eyes and realized that Mannion Bay, fed by all the nutrients and food carried by Terminal Creek, Bowen's biggest stream, was also Bowen's most fertile estuary and should be a hotbed of marine life. Even though humans have worn it down some over the last century, the basic mechanics of its richness remain. Terminal Creek's fertilizing nutrients, the extensive intertidal sand flats, and its storm-protected waters. So this year, I decided to give Mannion Bay a really good look. So, here I am. It's midsummer and I've decided to start my snorkel explore right in Terminal Creek. I'll work my way down Terminal Creek, through the lagoon, and then into Mannion Bay to get a feeling for how they all connect together. Now the creek is a delicate ecosystem, so I have to tread carefully. I'm here to view it as a scientist might, to uncover its secrets so I can tell its story. There's a place just deep enough to get my head underwater and, carefully, I take a look. Right away a sculpin fish darts away, then I'm stunned, a crayfish jumps up. I didn't even know we had crayfish on Bowen. I move to quieter waters further out in the pool. Almost immediately I see little cutthroat trout hunting the current for food. I've seen similar trout out in Mannion Bay. They move back and forth between stream and ocean, depending where the food is. I'm marveling at all the organic debris floating by when I catch sight of a crayfish crawling out from a hiding spot in the stream floor rocks. Crayfish are a freshwater cousin to lobsters and crabs, and feed on everything from decaying plants to small fish and insects. Wow, this crayfish is bold. Bits of plant debris float by, and the stream's murky color tells me that the water is full of dissolved nutrients. I think of all the forests, soils, and wetlands upstream, full of insects and bacteria and fungi, breaking down organic matter and releasing nutrients, and all this seeping into the stream. Suddenly, it dawns on me. The creek is acting as a giant conveyor belt, carrying food and fertilizer from the forest by the creek down to the sea. I continue downstream, so struck by this new view of the creek as a conveyor belt. I try to tiptoe carefully along the bars and through the creek mouth marsh, and then slip into the lagoon. The lagoon was created in the 1920s, when the causeway was built, damming the waters of Terminal Creek and converting a narrow arm of Mannion Bay into a brackish pond where stream and ocean mix. So I poke my way along through its murky waters. But I am just delighted with the forest of bubbles draped over lagoon plants that light up in the sunlight. And these bubbles are so revealing. We never see the oxygen that land plants produce for us, but here, underwater, the oxygen factory is plain to see. Further along, I happen on a school of stickleback, with their telltale, slender bodies and small tails. Stickleback, like cutthroat trout, move back and forth between freshwater and ocean, and I've seen them in Mannion Bay where they feed on plankton. I watch one hover like a hummingbird, fanning its side fins as it hunts for insect larvae among the algae. The spines that give sticklebacks their name are usually retracted, but I watch one raise its protective spines for a moment and realize what a deterrent this might be to predators. It's amazing to think that before the 1920s, I'd be swimming in the ocean right now. At that time, the lagoon was a narrow arm of Mannion Bay that drained at low tide. The construction of the causeway dammed the waters of Terminal Creek, creating a freshwater lagoon right beside the ocean. The tide's low, exposing the vast sand flats of the Inner Estuary, dumped here over the millennia by Terminal Creek. An estuary is the mixing zone where a river delivers its nutrient-rich waters and sediments to the ocean, creating a rich ecosystem. Terminal Creek is by far Bowen's biggest stream system, and so Mannion Bay is by far Bowen's biggest estuary. I pick my way carefully across the oyster-covered flats, trying not to damage the intertidal life under my feet, and head into the shallows of the Inner Estuary. Over the years, oyster abundance has waxed and waned in this warmest and most protected part of Mannion Bay. But in the past few years, their numbers have gone way up. I float along, trying to get a glimpse of the oyster animal inside the shells. Oyster, like many clams, are filter feeders, drawing in seawater, straining its contents for food, and expelling the rest. But what really catches my eye are the barnacles attached to the oyster. I just love watching these energetic little guys flailing their feathery legs, trying to sift the water for food. I head along the shore and into the sand flats which cover most of the Inner Estuary. Right along the shore I find a school of juvenile salmon, likely coho released from our salmon hatchery on Terminal Creek. The estuary is vital to these young salmon, who fatten up here before heading out to sea. In deeper water, the sand flat seafloor is pockmarked with holes, and many of the holes lie on top of small cones of sand. These miniature sand volcanoes mark the tops of subterranean tunnels, erupted from the diggings of ghost shrimp as they burrow their way along, feeding on little bits of organic matter. But there are cockle shells here too, reminding me that at least some of these holes are clam feeding tubes. And a clam makes this point clear as I watch a one-armed rock crab when suddenly a clam hole just starts to spout sand, pointing to this busy but hidden world below the seafloor. I arrive at the edge of the eelgrass beds that rim the shallow offshore waters of Mannion Bay. Eelgrass beds are the all-star habitat in the bay. No other can match the diversity of life that thrives in these dense underwater jungles. As I swim through, a school of perch dart ahead of me. I pick a blade and take a close look. The eelgrass leaf is covered with a coating of algae. A host of tiny grazing invertebrates eat this rich algae coating, in turn feeding small fish and making eelgrass beds such a rich habitat. Eelgrass thrives in the sunlit, shallow waters of sheltered coastlines like Mannion Bay. And I'm reminded that this is just the place where boaters like to anchor, as I see an anchor below on the edge of the eelgrass. A dragging anchor chain can do great harm to an eelgrass bed. But there are simple solutions, so there's no need for a boater to damage eelgrass beds. I pause and look around, and I'm reminded that I am literally in the front yards of so many people. This underwater world of oyster fish and eelgrass is just part of the neighborhood, and together we're all neighbors. I head across the bay to a rock reef that pokes out of the water at low tide. The reef is less protected than the Inner Estuary, and the small waves break into a cloud of bubbles. Shiner perch dance over the mussel beds, hunting for tiny invertebrates that hide among the mussels. These shiners are abundant along our shores, swimming in schools that can range up to the thousands. I break open a mussel and drop it in front of me. What a frenzy! It's really time to wrap up my swim. But what an intriguing world I've just witnessed. By connecting the stream and ocean and seeing it all as a connected estuary has really transformed my view of Mannion Bay. It's just so much more interesting now. So many interesting questions to explore, so much more to figure out. All I know is that this is a really remarkable place. And seeing Mannion Bay as an estuary where streams mix with the ocean and create a rich habitat for life has opened my eyes to its wonders.